The other thing too with the mirrors too is besides the idea of him seeing himself, these women are dead and he's putting mirrors in their eyes. And in a way, to put mirrors in somebody's eyes is to keep the eyes alive,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Because the eyes are still reflecting what's really going on still outside, right? So to speak.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
You sounded really excited about that, David.
Oh, I am.
Did not love that.
That was juicy.
The big hormone enneagram.
Let me lay it on the line. I got a little freakiness inside. Let you know that the man has got to deal with it.
Hi, I'm John Lukovich, sexual self-pres 4 with 5 wing, 458 trifix.
Hi, I'm David Gray, self-pres sexual 9 with a 1, 974 trifix.
What up? It's Emeka. I'm in an 8 wing 7, sexual self-pres with 854 fixes.
Hi, I'm Nancy. I am a self-pres social 3, wing 4, with a 369 trifix. If you like our podcast, guys, make sure you go like and subscribe on the Apple Podcast app. And if you really like us, you should definitely leave us a review.
Manhunt is a beautiful film.
Oh, I love it.
yeah.
I knew you guys would
Oh,
like
man.
it.
Yeah.
Michael Mann, he does. I just forgot because I was on a big Michael Mann kick when I first started like really getting into films, and Heat was one of my favorite films just because it was just like a crime movie, but it was just beautifully shot. And watching this film again, I was like, man, this dude really cares about aesthetics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so much. Maybe we should save our glow for
Yeah.
when we start.
should.
but
Yeah.
I love Manhunter.
Watching it and hearing you say that that was the first serial killer that the sexual for, I was like, yeah, 1000%.
Yeah.
I was surprised. I was like, this is kind of like you kind of have to know something about this type or archetype to really create a character that seems so real, because it was just really well done. I was like, wow, okay.
It was like watching it was like really striking for me. All right, welcome to Big Hormone Enneagram. We're taking a break from the harmonics, and we're gonna be doing Big Flick Energy, the second submission after we did the Netflix series Dark. We are gonna look today at the movies Silence of the Lambs by who's it by?
Jonathan Demme is the director.
Jonathan Demme, and Manhunter by Michael Mann. Particularly, we're going to look at the trying to understand image and the image center through the lens of the killers that are in the movies, and how Buffalo Bill and the Tooth Fairy and Hannibal Lecter reflect different aspects of the emotional center, image and transformation, things like this. But also, to back up first, these two movies are based on novels by a guy named Thomas Harris. And even though Silence of the Lambs and Manhunter are different directors, different cast, the source material comes from the same universe. So, Silence of the Lambs, starring Jodie Foster and what's his name?
Anthony Hopkins.
Anthony Hopkins. It was a big hit, and so they made a prequel with Anthony Hopkins and Edward Norton called The Red Dragon and Ralph Fiennes. Manhunter was made in the 80s, whereas Silence of the Lambs was made in the 90s, and Manhunter is based on the same material as The Red Dragon, but it's totally different universe. So, like Hannibal Lecter shows up in both Manhunter and Silence of the Lambs, played by Brian Cox in Manhunter. So, if you're gonna watch these movies, and I recommend you do because they're fucking great. Spoiler alert: we're gonna spoil everything. So
wait, you're telling people that they should watch Manhunter instead of watching Red Dragon because
I
that's
think Red Dragon sucks. Yeah.
Wasn't and isn't it the exact same story?
Yeah, like Red Dragon, they tried to replicate the chemistry between Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins with having, Jodie Hopkins is Clarice Starling, who is this young FBI trainee who is supposed to coerce or get Hannibal Lecter to help her and the FBI figure out who Buffalo Bill is, this murderer that's abducting women. And with Red Dragon, it focuses on the character of Will Graham, who's in Manhunter as well, but played by Ed Norton. And he's the character that brings Hannibal Lecter into prison. And even though there is this element in both Manhunter and Red Dragon of trying to get Hannibal Lecter's insight and help, Red Dragon focuses way too much on Hannibal Lecter and Edward Norton, and they just don't have the kind of chemistry and the kind of there's not the tension there that made Silence of the Lambs so great. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Yep. Part of the magic of the original Silence of the Lambs
Jesus.
movie, as compared to all the other ones that had Anthony Hopkins, I think there's 2 more that had him
Mhm.
as Hannibal Lecter, is the 2 later ones with Anthony Hopkins had him on screen a lot. And the magic of Silence of the Lambs is, believe it or not, he was only on screen in that movie like 11 minutes.
Yeah.
And so it's like really potent, and you don't see him, and it's darker and scarier because it's sort of like his presence is looming over the movie, right?
Right.
In a certain way.
Yeah, I want to give a quick overview of the plots of these movies, and most people are familiar with Silence of the Lambs, so maybe it's the place to start in terms of an overview. But so Silence of the Lambs, a lot of people have seen. As I said, Jodie Foster plays Clarice Starling, a young FBI trainee who's hunting a serial killer called Buffalo Bill, and Buffalo Bill is known for abducting women, keeping them for 3 days without sexually harming them or anything, but keeping them and starving them or something, and then skinning them and disposing of the bodies. And it's this real heinous serial killer, and the FBI just can't figure out how to catch him. And so I don't remember exactly why or how, but they understand that Hannibal Lecter is connected to Buffalo Bill. And so they send Clarice Starling, who's very young and inexperienced, to this interview Hannibal Lecter. Hannibal Lecter is a psychologist or psychiatrist and like a very sophisticated fancy boy, and really good at mind games and reading people immediately. And they have this very powerful and potent dynamic between them where they're kind of playing each other, but there's also sort of mutual respect that forms between Jodie Foster's character and Anthony Hopkins' character. And it culminates in finding Buffalo Bill and rescuing a girl he has trapped in one of the well in his basement. Where it relates to the image center is that first, I think Hannibal Lecter is portrayed as a social self-pres 3 with a 4-wing. Would you all agree with that?
Yes.
Mhm.
And then Buffalo Bill, I don't think his type is less clear, but he seems to me to be maybe a 4 with a 3-wing
In
That could be
Silence of the Lambs,
in Silence of the Lambs.
it's possible.
Yeah,
Emeka,
I
do
mean,
you
it's
s- do you
it's
s-
not portrayed particularly clearly, but I mean, there is that whole image thing.
Yeah.
And he's not a 3. So
Yeah.
Yeah, so and then going to Manhunter, which takes place chronologically before Silence of the Lambs, and this is my case for why Buffalo Bill might be a 4.
Mhm.
But Manhunter is about a FBI agent named Will Graham who deeply scarred by when he brought Hannibal Lecter into custody before before the movie takes place, and he's sort of like in retirement and recovering from that trauma and living on the beach, and he's brought in for one last case. And Crawford, or excuse me, Graham's like ability is that he's really good at putting himself in the place of or imagining the motives or the what's going on in the serial killer's mind, what their like symbolic logic is, and he can kind of like lose himself in picturing and playing out and reenacting what the serial killer was experiencing and dreaming of and thinking of. And so it's very taxing. So he goes and he gets dragged into the case. He does consult Hannibal Lecter some, but gradually over time, you learn that the serial killer he's nicknamed the Tooth Fairy. And what he does is he enters the homes of like in the suburbs of like suburban homes. Uh, he enters and he kills the whole family, and he performs. I think it's like some sexual rituals with the woman, with the wife of the family, the mother, and he'll break glass and he'll put glass in the eyes of the dead.
Mirrors.
Mirrors, yeah, mirrors.
Yeah.
And there's this whole thing where he has like these dentures that he bites them and leaves a kind of where he's given the name the Tooth Fairy. His real name is Francis Dolarhyde, and there's this whole kind of ritualistic aspect to the killings that Graham is tasked for trying to understand and figure out. And in the case of both the Tooth Fairy, Francis Dolarhyde, and Buffalo Bill, who I think is named James Gum or something in the movie, both. So I was struck by watching Manhunter because Manhunter to me, the killer is a sexual 4 with a 5 wing. So that's my type, and I was like, holy shit! Like I
Sean's
get
watching
it.
himself.
Yeah, I was really struck. And in the case of both these characters, there's this huge emphasis, Buffalo Bill and the Tooth Fairy, on transforming their identity and a rejection of their current identity or understanding or experience of self and trying to become something else. And in a kind of a ritualistic, abstract, symbolic way. And that emphasis on symbol as a carrier of identity and of this sense of I guess frustration that who and what I am is not what I'm supposed to be, and these sort of grandiose morphing into something more grandiose. So like the Tooth Fairy character, the sexual 4, he is becoming an identity called the Red Dragon, and his teeth are a symbol of this. And you don't see it in the movie, but it was used in the promotional, like the poster and stuff like this. He's got a big red dragon tattoo from William Blake's. Um,
Is another sexual 4 with a 5, I think.
yeah, exactly. From the great red dragon and the woman clothed in the sun painting that William Blake did. And with the woman that he's like the mother of the families that he attacks, she is somehow taking the role of the
Mhm.
woman clothed in the sun. So anyway, that's like the overview, and I'll shut the fuck up. But I was curious what y'all think so far.
Yeah, the first time I heard you say that, I was like, okay, let's see. And watching the movie and his scenes, he's clearly like an image type. That was image was such a huge theme for
Mhm.
his character, and reactive too. I wanted to look into the actor who played him because I don't think it's kind of difficult to pull off that sort of withdrawn, reactive, frustrated quality. Just the affect. It seemed
Mhm.
really realistic because the way the guy was playing him felt like I was watching a 4, like an actual 4. If an actual
Mhm.
4 was a serial killer, like it would be this um really frustrated, reactive, but like I'm ugly and unattractive. Like a sexual 4 is this
Mhm.
frustration affect of I'm performing this ritual to become what I believe is going to be wanted. Yeah, it really, I think the scene where he's watching the girl that he has a crush on get taken home by another guy. Even he's imagining that this is someone that she likes or that she's attracted to, and just the image of like him imagining and getting worked up
Yeah.
on that, even though like all that happened was that the guy just picked some hair or a piece of whatever that was stuck in her hair. He made it out into this whole like mind-blowing romantic image, and I was like, yep, that's sexual image type right there.
Yeah, like for listeners who haven't seen Manhunter, which fucking see it, it's great. It's so beautiful, like it's so aesthetic. It's like
Mhm.
the cinematography is just incredible. And like I think the Will Graham character is kind of cheesy, and there is a certain cheesiness to the movie, which for me, in a sense, enhances it because
Yeah,
it's like distilled '80s, Um,
totally.
but yeah, the director has such an amazing way of framing things with color, and there's just a deliberateness to it, and it's just such an aesthetic experience. And so there is this scene where Tooth Fairy Dolarhyde, he works in some kind of image or film and photograph processing, like the kind of place that, like, if you send your, like, back when they took regular photos or whatever, they had to print out at a store, that's
Like
like
on
the
home
actual
videos.
film.
yeah, like
Yeah.
actual film, like you'd send it into this place to get it processed, and they'd send it to like your CVS or whatever that you pick up from there. So he works in a dark room basically, and one of his coworkers is this blind woman. And one of the things about Dolarhyde is he's not bad looking, but he's like bald and tall and lanky, and he's got like a cleft lip that he's really ashamed of. And this woman who's blind can't see him, and she starts to get feelings for him. And despite all, like, during all the time that he's doing these killings, which he's doing them according to the full moon because he's transforming like the moon transforms, she ends up at his place and they hook up, and he's like falling in love with her. And it's like, as you're watching this, even though you know how horrible the character is, you're sort of touched by it.
Mhm.
And there's this scene though where a coworker drives the blind woman home, and Dolarhyde Tooth Fairy is like in his van, like waiting for her to get home. And it's this like cute scene where she pulls up and he like sort of smiles, and they walk, the blind woman and the coworker walk to the front door. And the coworker, you see him, Dolarhyde, watching them. And as the coworker pulls some like pollen off of her hair or something, she's blind, whatever. You see from Dolarhyde's perspective, and it's like backlit in this like pink neon, and the song is really intense, and you see it looks like she is being caressed by him, and that she is sort of like swooning with desire at this guy's touch.
And also
And
the guy is like 4 inches taller in his imagination.
Yeah.
oh yeah,
You're right.
oh
It's like,
god,
because the guy's shorter than the woman is, but in his imagination, he's like, it's like this picture perfect, like romantic scene where he's taller than she is. And I was like, wow.
Yeah,
a
and the
great point.
coworker's like this short little nerd.
Yeah.
yeah. So so then like you see him like rip up the Dolarhyde rip up some interior
The
lining of his
dashboard.
car dashboard, out of rage, and then he ends up killing the coworker and abducting the blind woman, who he's trying to, like, she goes, Francis, his name's Francis. Francis, are you there? He says, "There's Francis is gone." That he's the Red Dragon now.
Oh.
And he's like got this weird fucking apartment, and he's like, or house or something, and he's like, him struggling with whether to kill her or not is like where the climax starts to happen. But watching that scene, I think, is the scene where he's mistaking the pollen with this whole desirous thing, like, hit me so fucking hard.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I relate so fucking hard to this. Like I'm, very jealous of my partner's exes and things like this. And like the images that I can, if I'm not watching myself, like they just come up of like intense longing and sexual desire and sexual rapture that I like project and like burns in me sometimes, is so fucking intense.
Yeah, and it's like
That's
replacing the real images of what happened with your own images,
mhm,
right?
Yeah.
absolutely.
That was the scene where I was like, holy shit. Like, did somebody, how do you come up with this scene, this character? This is such a bullseye for sexual for. Like, it, as a sexual type, I can relate somewhat, but it's even more
Right.
specific because it's about image,
Mhm.
like it was just such an intense image center experience from a sexual type point of view. And I was like, I've never seen that, to that, how it was just like zoomed in on that to that degree. I was like, that's fucking incredible.
Yeah, that envy and rage and jealousy and frustration and self-rejection and self-hatred was all like so distilled in that quick bit of film. And one of the things about the Tooth Fairy killer is that, like, part of the ritual aspect of the killings is to become someone desirable,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and that the mirrors in the eyes of his victims are like ways to see desire in their eyes. and that through this like bizarre way that he is he does these killings in the moonlight, that getting blood everywhere and all over himself and things like that. um and as Hannibal Lecter says to Will Graham, like, he says, do these houses have big well shaded backyards? And Graham's like, yeah. And he's like, well, that's probably he says something about being in blood in the moonlight, suggesting that there's a whole aspect of this ritual where the Tooth Fairy killer goes out there and is like basking in the moonlight or something like this in his transformation. And so there's a self-rejection, and that's punctuated by all this frustration. It's not just poor self-esteem. It's like this really intense self-rejection that comes out of the frustration that I think is really core to Four, which is the indiscrepancy between my personality and my day-to-day functioning and being a person in the world, and this inner felt sense of what and who I really am, and how you see both the self-hatred and the grandiosity that results from that in these characters.
Also interesting that he puts mirrors in the women's eyes, because that's actually sort of converse to everything you said. It's a kind of narcissism, because
Hmm.
he would be seeing his own reflection in their
Hmm.
eyes.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like very self-absorbed and narcissistic, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's like seeing their desire for him, and it's not really
Yeah.
even about his own desire.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
that part kind of confused me because, like, I don't get him seeing himself and then seeing desire. I don't understand that.
I mean, I think it has a lot to do with just like the nature of narcissism, right? Like when you're there's just like total layers and layers of self-absorption. And so keep in mind also that he's like got these teeth in, I guess, when he's doing this, and he's got this tattoo, and he seemingly, I don't know if he has the mask he has in the movie
Mm,
for that one scene where he's torturing
the dude.
the uh journalist or whatever,
Hmm.
but he's
I
like
like that scene.
Yeah, that seems pretty dope.
do you see? Do you see? And again, it's like image. Like, do you
Yeah,
see?
like, do you understand?
Do you understand?
The
Yeah.
other thing too with the mirrors too is, besides the idea of him seeing himself, these women are dead, and he's putting mirrors in their eyes. And in a way, to put mirrors in somebody's eyes is to keep the eyes alive,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Because the eyes are still reflecting what's really going on still outside, right? So to speak.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
You sounded really excited about that, David.
Oh, I am.
Did not love that.
That was juicy.
Mm.
Which made me think about the blind girl, because he really liked her for real,
Yeah.
and it was easier to like her for real when he didn't have to deal with her reaction to what he looked like.
To me, part of the deal there is it wasn't exactly clear really where she was necessarily on feelings to me about him. It was
Mhm.
just as much to me about her having a sexual experience, actually.
Mm.
So that kind of makes it, borderline, could even be adversarial in some sense in the context of what he wants.
Oh, so you're saying that it was pretty direct from point A to point B in terms of just her
I
wanting
think
to
she was
hook up
using him
with
for
him.
sex. Yeah.
Right. Mm. Well, I
Well-
mean, there was a part where she was like, you're such a thoughtful man.
Sure.
Like she, because the scene with her and the tiger, because he took her to go see, like he
Mhm.
offered to take her home, and he took her to go see, surprise, took her to go see a tiger
True.
who was being sedated, and it was such a powerful experience, and he was just really getting off on the fact that he had such a huge effect on her. She was crying at, and then so they finally get back to his place, and she was so affected and turned on, and
Mhm.
he gave her a drink, and she basically jumped him at that point. I think that whole thing, from a sexual type anyway, it was like sort of a mating dance thing, and she was really into it.
True. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying she didn't have feelings, but yeah, and that scene was interesting too. That scene with the tiger, because that was like sort of like, that the tiger's almost a red dragon. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Exactly,
yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean,
Um,
in that scene, he's like showing her his real self in some way,
That's it. Yeah.
and
he
then
also, at one point during the beginning when they didn't know who the killer was, didn't they say that he might be impotent with the opposite sex? And so
They
maybe
were planting that as a story to mess with him.
oh, okay.
'cause they
I
knew
missed that because
they
I was
knew
like,
he
oh, well,
wasn't.
he's having this sexual experience with this woman for the first time. But like, oh, okay.
No,
I
they
misunderstood that.
they
They
knew
did
he was
that. They did
sexually
that to draw him
narcissistic.
out.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, they like made a bunch of shit in the newspaper, like, oh yeah, he probably slept with his mother, and all this stuff because they knew that he
Oh,
was
okay.
sexually narcissistic given the nature of the crimes.
Okay.
That's why he killed that reporter, and that's why it was so enjoyable. I was like, yeah, cut this dude's head off.
I mean, I gathered that much.
So another element I thought was really interesting is in the final like climax when Dolarhyde is like at his place and Will Graham is like knocked unconscious and he's like shooting people, like how rigid and stiff his movements
Mhm.
were,
Mhm.
Yeah.
like how disembodied.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Like, I thought that was a really great touch because it's like the whole thing is he's not embodied. Like he's very like even the way that
Mm.
the way he tracked or like chose his victims, which were across different states, so that it was hard for people to figure out like why he was choosing who he was choosing. Was that working in this video lab or this film development lab? He would get all these like home movies and he would memorize like what the layout of these people's homes was like and who their pets were and all these kind of things based on what just watching and watching and watching an image and image and image. And so there's this like I think that the nature of the killings and all this stuff was like based in the imagination image realm. And then the blind woman, I think her name was Reba, like that was like a real relationship. It was like
Mhm.
outside the confines of just symbolism
Hmm.
and inward stuff. And it was like she wasn't like head over heels in love with him because it was a new thing, but it was like, oh, now I'm having to like be vulnerable in a way that is outside of my image shit. And I thought
Mm.
that was like part of what made it sort of sweet and human. And it was like, yeah, she was clearly like horny for him, but it was like a genuine horny. It's like,
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
That's true.
so I want to talk about Hannibal Lecter, who I think is a 3 and his thing, and then like watching Silence of the Lambs brought out a bunch of stuff about Clarice, Jodie Foster's character. I thought was interesting, but just to connect that back to Buffalo Bill, Buffalo Bill is, uh, he's abducting women, he is skinning them, and trying to make like a woman's suit. And there's this whole thing where he's like, Hannibal, this would not be made in like this today, right? It's like very transphobic, but he's like Hannibal Lecter says like Buffalo Bill is not a real transsexual. You see, like he just hates his identity, and that he is, he grows these sort of Asian moths that have the death's head moths that symbolize transformation. He puts them in the throats of the bodies, and there's this whole thing where he's trying to become something else, and so that emphasis on transformation and transformation through ritual seemed to be kind of in the fore and through image and stuff like that. But what stood out to me in watching Silence of the Lambs again yesterday was the sexual element in terms of the different like the male female thing where and I don't know where I'm going with this, but like Clarice is a young female FBI agent, and it's implied that like the reason her superior sends a young, inexperienced, trainee to deal with Hannibal Lecter is because he's kind of into her. Is at least what I got.
There's kind of a split in the movie where she's really clearly to me a 6 in the movie,
Mm.
Clarice is, and she's split between these two fathers. Hannibal
Interesting.
Lecter is a father and Jack Crawford, her boss, is a father. And she's sort of like very equally split between the two of them in terms of her, uh, I don't know, reverence for both of them in a certain way.
That's interesting because I saw Clarice as a 9.
Okay.
And in part, so like she goes to interview Lecter. Lecter tries to, like kind of gets in her head and messes with her and kind of shuts her out. And as she has to walk back from his cell past these like, worst of the worst guys,
Yeah.
to go back home or whatever. An inmate in a nearby cell has masturbated and flicks semen on her. And Lecter takes that as like a huge insult and agrees to like, continue interacting with Jodie Foster's character. Ends up convincing this other inmate to kill himself and all this kind of stuff. But he starts dropping her clues, and throughout the movie, so to get to Hannibal Lecter, she like the first like her boss is kind of into her, and then this guy does his like weird sexual stuff, and then the Dr. Chilton, who's like the head of the hospital that Lecter's in, is like trying to hit on her, and at the last minute he like tries to cancel their meeting, kind of do a power move, and Clarice like kind of flatters him like, oh, I did this because I'd missed your company. So she's like very non-reactive to me throughout the whole thing. And when she's with Lecter, who's a 3, and part of his 3 powers is like, unlike the other killers, like he can read people immediately and has this like real capacity, like in a 3-ish sense, to like get inside people and kind of adapt and play with other people. And with Clarice, he can't really play with her in a certain way. Like she lets herself be vulnerable with him in a way that I think he's like endeared by, which seems to me kind of 9-ish. But then she is able to fuck with him in terms of figuring out not only what his anagrams and the way he's throwing people off his scent, but she does this whole fake proposal that he's going to get all these benefits if he cooperates. And she's the one character that can get one over on him.
True. Yeah.
And he starts to respect her from that. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, I'm pretty attached for 20 years to her being a 6, so we have to do that debate.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the classic, policewoman 6 thing of her just doing all the right stuff, the training, the just, I don't know, and that sort of, and she's got and her real, it's also that father connection thing, because not only is it Lecter and her boss, but there's also a really strong connection to her own father who has died, at the point, and so forth. And it's just, yeah, I don't know. It's just, to me, the stock. Yeah, she might be a 6 with a 9 fix might be the compromise I'd make.
Here's like my perspective on that. Like, I think my perspective on Manhunter, the guy doing the investigation there, that to me seemed like a clear 9 character, like how a 9 would go about trying to solve a case, which is losing themselves in the perspectives and the dreams and the wishes of the killer. And sort of the 6
he was David as a cop.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Absent from his family, just completely
absent
like
from
not
the
there.
real world.
Yeah.
He
In dream
loses
world.
himself in imagination so bad that he has to go into a psych ward.
Yeah, but because imagination really played an underscore theme of Manhunter, but with Silence of the Lambs, there's some kind of like a 6th theme of dealing with these overbearing kind of male figures, and I think felt like dealing with authority figures and navigating male authority figures, like even the way it was shot, a lot of the stuff from the male gaze, like this foreboding presence of men, looming over her, and all
And
the
her
ways that
speaking up too, she had a reactive thing, like with those, like all the guys when they went to do that autopsy or whatever it was, whatever you call that, on the one girl that they found, and she sort of found her voice and said, "You guys clear out of here. We need to do this." You know what I mean? I don't know. It was more 6-ish to me, and she even gave her boss some, advice about how he should be and not, sort of treat her in a certain way because other men are gonna emulate him or whatever. Anyway.
And also, like, I think part of what makes roles really good, like, it's when a certain actor is playing true to their type. It's really hard for like a 6 to play off, like to pull off what the guy in Manhunter did. Like, that's some that the guy playing him seemed like a 9 as well, like
Mhm.
just that sort of dreamy, lost quality. And the actress playing Clarice is a real life 6, and that sort of the eye movements and the sort of the look of anxiety that she has in her eyes, like that you can't really fake that, or it's hard to ignore that. Like I guess 6 energy in investigator who's fearful but also brave and sort of still reverent of this sort of authoritative figure that she has to deal with.
Those are all really good points because, like, one of the scenes that struck me early on was when she goes to she figures out like one of Lecter's anagrams and figures out that it's like a storage unit that he owns, and she gets into it. And there's this whole scene where she's trying to open the door of the storage unit, but it's like jammed. And the guy she's with is like too old to help her. And she's like, "What about your driver?" And he's like, "Oh, he doesn't do labor." And so she has to like do it herself. There's this sort of the
Mhm.
structures or the supports aren't really there. So I have to keep moving forward myself
Mhm.
theme. But I also see a lot of the non reactivity and the kind of like, you can't touch me quality of 9 in her. Like
Mm.
that to me seemed what Lecter respected in her. But I think that there's like readings in both sense because it's a character rather than a
Sure.
fixed person. But I think, yeah, I think there's a lot of really good arguments for 6.
I think she knows the enneagram. What's her face?
Jodie Foster.
Yeah, she mistypes as a 5, but she knows
Yeah.
the enneagram.
Yeah, I was interested though in like like I haven't quite clicked it together. Like her journey is definitely has a lot to do with her being female, and like
Yes.
Yeah.
there is a way in which, unlike the male characters who are trying to prove something or do something, like even Lecter is trying to like impress people with his how intimidating and how smart he is, and Buffalo Bill is trying to transform, and the Dr. Chitlin is trying to be famous, and all this other shit. Like Clarice has this sort of open vulnerability that she uses to create a relationship with Lecter that gets where she's trying to go. But I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how that theme ties into the way Buffalo Bill was trying to transform. It like wasn't like wasn't. I mean, arguably, it wasn't like a transsexual thing where he like feels like he's really a woman on the inside. It had something to do with like trying to move toward that feminine energy and trying to integrate it in some way that was like kind of that was fucked up, but it was like I read it at least as like what that character was going for was something of the feminine that Clarice herself embodied. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I was thinking of it, I guess, in some sense of like an idealized androgyny, you
Mm,
know,
mhm,
some kind of symbolic, yeah, just integration that would then sort of like in, with the sort of red dragon imagery that, then you are you're metamorphosized into some higher being or something maybe.
right,
Yeah. Yeah.
right. That's that scene where he's dancing to like "Goodbye Horses" by Lazarus Q. And he's like, "Will you fuck me? I'd fuck
Yeah.
you."
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
There's a lot of like goddessy kind of images to me, and like
Mhm.
the way he's identified with his moth, and like he tucks his junk, and he does that like thing where like whatever, I don't know what that thing is called, but where guys can like tuck their junk and it looks like they don't have junk or something.
Yeah.
And then he like brings his arms out with this like technicolor coat or something like that, and it's like very wings and like kind of
Yep.
goddessy. Got
Yep.
He's got the wig of a woman's scalp on, and stuff like this. Uh, it was just also very image and very, but like like transcending. Like he wasn't gonna have a human life as a woman. Like he's
Mhm.
gonna wear a woman's suit, but it wasn't like to go to the store and make friends. It was like spiritual.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Lecter was really imagey too. I mean, he
Hmm.
was visual artist and so forth, and he was, cued in on different things around people's image, like the senator, you
Mhm.
know, when they meet and love your suit, you know, that kind
Right.
of thing. That kind of stuff. Yeah.
And even his
Uh,
whole like there's that scene where he gets transferred to that like I don't know what it is, but it's like a hotel that they've turned into a prison for him.
Yeah.
Where after he
yeah.
gave information leading to Buffalo Bill's identity, like that where he makes his escape, that whole facility or whatever, he gets privileges to like draw and to have his music and stuff. And it's like there's a scene where he like ends up like the guards that give him food, he kills and he's listening to music as one of them is like limping
Yeah.
away or something. And it's like it's so phony and like, you know, like flamboyant fancy boy and his whole you know, even his comment earlier in the movie when he first meets Clarice, where he says something like, "Someone tried to do this to me, and I ate his liver with flava beans or whatever." It's like so fancy boy, social self pres 3 stuff.
Oh, big time. And
And
then that scene you're talking about with the where he kills the guards, there's a they don't it's like a 2-second shot where he's strung up that one guard, and it's similarly this grand operatic sort of stage thing that he did with the body.
yeah,
Uh, yeah.
yeah, that whole thing with like had an artistry to it.
Yeah.
So I don't have any conclusions yet or anything, but I just thought that these like were really interesting examples of like fictional, you know, aesthetic symbolic examples of image and how it works. And you know, I don't know if there's like a comparable to serial killer or something character, but the whole thing that I think is so interesting is their different expressions of to me how the identity this felt sense of identity that is the preoccupation of the heart types feels bigger than the world, like not in the sense of more narcissistic can be I guess, but like it feels like it's more than can be expressed in a human life, and that like the sense of being a person is like limiting on that sense of identity, like that identity is you know, I think has like a spiritual root. Like it's that sense of what you really are and how your day-to-day life fails to sort of live up to or express that real felt inner sense.
Mhm.
And how both are both of the 4 characters and the 3 character emphasized or represented this, you know, a sick version of trying to be something like operatic, trying to be something that is you know, it's the problem of the image types in general is like trying to be what you are and is the task that the image types feel like they're trying to do all the time. And how like at least for the 4, there's a constant frustration that your day-to-day felt sense of identity, your day-to-day experience, your body, the circumstances you're in are like deeply, deeply disappointing and deeply, deeply cheap compared to how special the inner life feels.
I'm reminded of something Nancy said on one of the pods. Just when somebody says be yourself, it's like, what? Like, what are you even talking about to an image type? Because being yourself is so not, you know, grand in an imagistic sense.
Hmm.
Is that,
Right.
yeah.
It's like, what do you mean by self? Because there's like the day to day, like
There's a
going-
million selves.
there's the day to day, the self, and then at least for 4, speaking as a 4, there's like a self that is like located on the astral plane. You know, that's like
Yeah.
that is the red dragon or is the androgynous thing or is the thing that's like
Hmm.
it's like got a divine feeling to it, a
Hmm.
special feeling that can never be like an artwork that can never be realized in the materials of this world. So there's constant disappointment. That's what the envy is this constant sense that like it's not like necessarily I'm so special, but it's like this sense of something sacred and spiritual can never be in this world.
Yeah, that that makes a lot of sense to me. A lot of people say I'm really good at being myself, and I always think that's kind of odd. Like a lot of people are like, "Oh, wow, like it's so cool that you're just so like willing to be yourself, like, first of all, I feel like that's kind of a backhanded compliment, but like,
How is that a back? I don't even know what they're trying to say by saying.
well, I understand what they're trying to say, but like, I just think that's kind of a weird way of saying it. But what they're saying is like, I wish I could um be as weird and not normal as you, is what they're saying, and or something along those lines.
Oh,
And yeah, and I don't know, it's just, it's weird to me because none of it is like trying to be myself, because I'm never going to just give the world my whole self. Like, I'll give you parts of it and I just change which part I'm showing you. And like, I can't encompass all of that in one, if that makes sense. Like, yeah, I can be myself, but there's like so many of them, I can't be them all at once.
So can you say more about the different selves? Like I don't remember exactly what was said, but your response was like, "Well, there's so many selves," or something like that. Can you?
Yeah.
Because I think that's where 4 and 3 get different.
hmm
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't feel like there's one true, I wish there was one true self, but it doesn't ever feel like that's accurate. It feels like there's my super bisexual version of myself that's like really outwardly gay and like all about it. There's the, I'm in love with my fiance version of myself and I just walk around with hard eyes all the time. There's the I dye my hair orange and I want to be a punk rock band person part of myself. Like, and then there's the professional part of myself. Like, there's no one part and I can't be them all at once. I
it's
don't
almost like you're fully committing to. At certain points, you might be fully committing to a certain character a character that you've played before that represents a part of you, but
Yeah.
you can't play all those characters at the same time.
Yeah, and none of them aren't me. And so
hmm
I've just kind of started, like, I used to get really annoyed with that. Like, I would be annoyed with myself because I would feel like I was lying to people all the time. But what I've come to the conclusion of is like, just be however you feel right now, and that's true to what's happening for you
Mm,
right now.
mm-hmm.
And we're just going to go with that, because obviously we're not going to get to a point where I can just be one person. That's impossible. So
I,
maybe don't strive for that.
I feel like in contrast to 4, like the 3's ideal identity, or ideal sounds too foreign, but the higher identity or something that that is trying to be expressed through action in the world. It feels like it's potential, like,
Yeah.
hmm
and I feel like that's what 3's are always so sensitive to, is potential and possibility, and that there's any number of ways to actualize that possibility in time and space through achievement and through whatever. But whereas like before, it's like really defined, like it's overly defined sense of self. Whereas like the 3 has this like potential self, and I think that when 3's like love somebody, they're really good at honing in on other people's like potential. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's what makes us really good at reading people, I think, because we can see their potential and we can kind of see what they're not
Mm.
being that they could
Mm-hmm.
be, and therefore if we really want to dig a knife in, we can. Like in Manhunter, when Hannibal Lecter was like really kind of like needling the Graham guy, I was like, yeah, I get that.
Well, I mean, what you just spoke to does speak also to Lecter in Silence of the Lambs with, like, I feel like that's what he was struck by with Clarice, where, like, he saw her potential. Like, he saw that he couldn't quite figure her out immediately. Like, she had a certain kind of depth that he couldn't figure out. And I think it was because her motivation was, like, the name of the Silence of the Lambs comes from a story she tells him about in childhood, where she was living on a farm and she heard these baby lambs being slaughtered and tried to save one and couldn't. And that, you know, Lecter postulates that the reason she's motivated to solve these crimes in general is to silence the lambs, the screaming of the lambs in her. And, that's a very selfless motivation. I mean, it's a motivation that comes from empathy.
Mhm.
hmm
And like Lecter, that it touches on different cases that he's experienced, and it's everybody's very self-absorbed and selfish and whatever. And Lecter himself is like basically just trying to be the biggest, baddest, most impressive, smartest guy. And here's this very genuine person in front of him, and he was
Yeah,
like, the world's better with you in it, is what he said to Clarice.
Yeah, there's a couple of moments where they, it's a shot of Anthony Hopkins' character as she's telling her story or after she's just finished it, where he's obviously gone into a different place internally, and you see that on his face, and it's because of something he's getting from her innocence. That's a different kind of um, state for him than his normal way of being.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, as just as an aside, I kind of in my head when I watch these movies, I can totally see myself like playing like talking my way out of like a moment where I got stolen, because I'm like, yeah, I could totally like find their weakness and be like, "Oh, your father left at a young age. Good to know." Like and just I
Mhm.
could totally see myself talking my way out of that, just cuz like you can just kind of feel into what they are at the moment as a 3.
Don, when you say like with 4, the idealized self-image or whatever you want to call it is a singular entity,
Mm-hmm.
is it somewhat continually morphing, evolving in some way, or how would you describe it along those lines?
So I always think of the way I think of the heart center is that 2, 3, and 4 they represent different ways that all people try to express and to know and express their identity. So 2 knows and expresses identity through relationship. Like, we all know parts of ourselves through how we show up in relationship.
Mhm.
3 is a part of us that knows and expresses that our sense of identity, our potential through actualization, through action and achievement. And 4 is I'm going to hone in on what is uniquely mine, that's not a product of my upbringing, my background, of any kind of conditioning, like what's uniquely my own.
Mhm.
And so it's like a point, or I sometimes use the term kernel, like a point that is just absolutely uncontaminated by anything. And so there is a sense that it does transform and does move, and it's not like super well defined, but it's like when you know it kind of feeling.
Mm.
You know when you're out of sync with it, and that like a lot of the four's grief and frustration is when they're out of sync with that identity. But there is a sense of it becoming deeper. Like it doesn't change necessarily in the sense of many different expressions, or even growth necessarily, like maybe like 3 might frame it, but like
Mhm.
it gets deeper, it gets richer, it gets like, and in the using the movies as an example, like, the Dolarhyde Tooth Fairy character has taken the red dragon as like as an expression of this, an image or symbol of this identity, and it gets more elaborated, and like it gets more like fleshed
Mm.
out,
Mhm.
and it's more like this potential gets more expression through like, oh, here is the tiger, here's the teeth, here are the actions. It's like almost the opposite of, I don't know if opposite of 3 is the right way, but it's not like I'm gonna do a bunch of things to show my value or my show my identity. It's like these are all things that resonate with the like more platonic
That
ideal of identity.
that make it more specific.
Yes, yes, yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like maybe you start off with this very specific, minute drawing, and then the 4 is like filling out the rest of the painting.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, it's like well, like even take like the painting of the red dragon. Like I don't know what William Blake's process was, but from my own sense of painting, it's like you get this sense of like awe and power in relation to a complementary counterforce. It's the woman clothed in the sun, or it's like
Mm-hmm.
the masculine power and chthonic red dragon charge. It's like the dragon is not just a dragon; it's like a human dragon, and the feminine lightness. And it's like you can feel that, like even just that painting gives you like a hit of a feeling before
Mm-hmm.
you can cognitively put it apart. And like that's often how when I paint, there's this like boom, this like impression that can't really no words or a single image can really capture it, but a painting then is a way to symbolically arrange elements to sort of evoke that same space as much as possible, as accurately as possible. And so I think the same thing is true with identity for four, at least, is like I can never be that initial impression, that initial kernel, but I can arrange things and live in accord with things that are evocative of that original source. But the more unhealthy I am as a four, the more I'm focused on arranging things to be reflections of that identity rather than having a felt sense of that identity that's ongoing.
Yeah, just watching Manhunter, I felt like, this guy's so lost in the representation of this ideal sense of himself that he's not even being a human anymore.
Mhm.
It's like playing out the ritual of I am becoming, this
Mhm.
thing. And so I guess that's what the fixated for can be is the continuous process of becoming the ideal versus actually being a human.
Exactly. Fucking exactly.
Right, because him as a human probably wouldn't be that bad, but
Yeah.
him
He'd
as
just be a
someone
normal
who's
guy, that like works at a video thing and whatever.
right, he'd just be normal. Like there would be no issues. He seems to have a really dope apartment. Like I don't know.
I felt really a little bit sad for him because when he was like, there was a real thing between
Mhm.
him and that blind
Yeah.
girl, and like it was actually happening. And like when he was imagining this whole thing with that jealousy imagination that he was
Mm.
having, and you knew what was going to happen next, I was like, man, you got no hope to have anything. You're stuck in this,
Yeah.
The
like
cycle.
fucking ritualistic trying to become the red dragon thing, and you're never going to be a human. Like,
He's so frustrated and so reactive that he's not even in reality.
yeah,
Right. Like he could have had like a nice relationship that's like normal, but like there's real love and passion and attraction, and he's desired for who he is, and he's
Yeah.
she like you bring a blind girl to a sleeping tiger, and she could get freaked out and be like, you're a weirdo, and she's into it, and it's like
Right.
you found the right lady. And
yeah,
Yeah.
that's like like as a four, when you're like, here are my paintings, and and it's like, do you see, when he's flipping that slideshow, do you see? It's like, oh, she saw.
yeah.
And
Mhm.
it's like, oh, it's not maybe like the red dragon and the woman clothed in the sun, but it's like actually real, and he could have had that. And
Oh,
but
you
he
know
was
what?
blind.
Fascinating as a metaphor too, that she's blind and she could
Right.
see.
Yes.
Yeah, because I guess it was better that she was blind because she wouldn't be distracted by like what he really is, but she could see
Yeah.
symbolically what he wanted to represent as
Yep.
himself. And because she was so into it, like, like a sleeping tiger is like, okay, what the fuck? But she was really moved by it.
Mhm.
And that scene for me was like, this is like that was another thing that stood out to me about the movie, because it's rare to see sexual types or asexual type character depicted. Like
Mhm.
his entire sense of himself was based on the reaction of who he was attracted to. And that scene where he had took her to the tiger, and she was having such a visceral reaction, and she was really into it. And then she said that, you're such a thoughtful, I think, and tender man, and that's what every sexual type is going for. It's like, let me do this thing for you that's gonna,
Show you this inner world.
yeah, like, it's gonna show you something that's really me, and it's not just, yeah, like that represents me in a very distinct kind of way, and I want to see what your reaction is going to be to that. And that she was really moved by that is like, what else do you want, man? You've got it all.
Yeah, and like maybe this is just me or whatever, but as a sexual type, it's like yeah, there was this scene like after like the morning after they have sex, and like he goes out and just like is like, are you okay? Like, that's his like line
Mhm.
into like everything's
Yeah,
good. I'm
yeah.
gonna get you coffee. Whatever he does, you
Mhm.
stay
Yeah, I
here
saw
'cause
John there.
yeah, that was I saw me there.
I know she
Uh,
wasn't in the bed and he like ran out. He's like, oh my God.
Yeah. Uh,
I was watching the film. I was like, I know John's screaming himself watching this movie right here. This
yeah.
is him.
There's this whole thing though too where it's like as this and maybe you can tell me if this is your experience or not, but like as a sexual type, there's like I have to have this huge fucking display. I have to be interesting. I have to have talent. I have to have talent here, here, and here. I have to be fun. I have to be funny. I have to be intelligent and deep and what all the stuff to be attractive and like I have to fuck really good. I have to have a big dick. I have to do all this other shit like muscles, all this other stuff. Like look at all this stuff, but then really you kind of like want like when she says that line of like you're such a sweet man, like that's
That's
it. Like that's like
Aw.
all that stuff is to like get the investment so that you can actually just like see the person, but it's like the thing that actually is there is like actually pretty it's not I don't know
More
it's
humble or something.
yeah there's something there where but it's like that all that display stuff seems to be and all that performance. It's not to say it's not totally absolutely meaningful because I feel like I'm most myself when I have sex. Like that's
It's are you gonna pick me?
are you gonna pick me? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
fucking yeah. Oof. Yeah.
Yeah, it's wanting to be. I don't like the word chosen, but it's like there has to be some kind of deliberate choice that what I'm doing that is
Mm,
really me and this sort of my personality as a vehicle of interestingness is
mm,
really doing something for you in a that sets me apart from any random person
mm,
who might be attractive for various reasons. Like this is there's some kind of chemical reaction going on here that can't be replicated, and there is a real yes going on. And like that feeling when he knew that he had an effect on her, like a real, because I mean he didn't, I don't even think he's ever really hung out with her before. He was just going to take her on a ride home, and he took her on a surprise. This is the sexual, I'm
right.
going to inject some provocation here. And she cried, she when she was,
Mhm.
because she was so affected. That moment to me was just like,
Yeah.
that, and he was getting high off of that. That was like a sexual type representation. It's like someone is getting off on the thing that you're doing that you feel is really you, and they really see it, and then they really recognize it, and they're sexually into you because of it. It's intoxicating. But then there's like a collapse, like the next day where you're just like, oh my God, like I can't believe that they're really into me. Like I can't believe this is working. Like it just
Mm.
I
I can't believe they did. I can't believe they did pick me.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. It's like, because the sexual type fear is that, I mean, maybe this is some Force stuff mixing in, is just like it's doomed. Like no one is ever really gonna want the real me
Totally.
if they really
Totally.
saw the full picture. So like you're doing
Mm,
all these things, and the fact that somebody's actually into it is unbelievable. And so you kind of collapse, like, oh my God, she's actually into it.
mm,
Totally. Like, yeah, like you want her to like pet the tiger and like want to be in like enmeshed with the tiger, like whatever
Yeah.
the tiger symbolizing. It was like
mhm.
that thing that seems like no one else can get it. You want it to reach in a way that nothing else can touch it. And so like then it goes to like so they have this very profound experience, Dolarhyde and Reba, the blind woman. And then, but he throws it all away for his envy over like a miscommunication or a misperception
Yeah.
in his own imagination. And it's like, I think, at least speaking for myself as a sexual four, it's like very hard to separate where, okay, you might have experienced, like you as my partner or lover might have experienced all this meaning with me, but it's hard for me not to see how you could, like, am I really special? Like, is it just something that you have with everybody? It's like, what's
Yeah.
actually,
Yeah.
where is it actually for me or not?
That's the fear.
Yep.
That's the kind of the engine that drives the sexual type to want to, I've got to turn it up. Like and it's not just like what I did yesterday or last week or last month is enough. It's like I continuously have to remind you
Yeah.
of why you should kind of re-up on your choice.
Exactly.
'Cause
Exactly.
You have to start the fire every day.
which sounds ridiculous because it's like, one, you would think, oh, when your partner has chosen you and said, I pick you, I'm attracted to you, I want to be with you, that's enough. No, it's not enough, because they could go tomorrow, next week, and have some kind of mind-blowing experience with someone else. It's like, I've got to be the most galvanizing, kind of that experience. And so not only just whatever I did before, we've got to go to another type of, we got to go into new frontiers. We've got to go deeper, where it's like, I've got to make your yes bigger than it was before.
Yeah. Yeah. Fuck.
Stoking the flames.
Yeah, no thanks.
Yeah. It's never over for sexual type. It's like, we're always in fear that whatever reason you wanted to be with us wasn't real or wasn't enough.
It's totally unstable. So it's not designed for stability, because you can't ever rest.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just watching the film, just like trying to understand what it must feel like or be like for someone to have your sense of self dependent on how you're being seen and reacted to by someone you're attracted to. Like,
Yeah.
how limited that is, first of all.
Yeah.
That your self-esteem and everything that you do is culminating to this moment where this person that you are interested in, and how they react to, the impressive things that you might be doing. That's what a sexual type is.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Fun.
Cool.
But, I mean, all the instincts suck. It's just
yeah.
because of sexual is so specific. It's like literally living through the eyes of these women that he's needing to see himself being wanted through their eyes. I felt like that was a great metaphor for, what sexual types are doing. It's like, everything is, the degrees of how I'm being wanted by this person. That's what my whole personality is here to manage and to strive for.
Yeah, the wanting never sticks. It never really feels
Right.
like it's complete. And so I think for what I've learned how to have to lean into is my social instinct, from the point of view of like realizing that, like, oh, I'm valuable as a person to this person,
Yeah.
like I
Yeah.
can
Not
be
just
loved.
an object, an
Yeah,
attraction
like
object.
yeah, like there's ways that are maybe outside of the way my personality views myself, that this person could be invested in me for.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it could be really like I can't really control attraction, but I can just stay interesting and vibrant and attuned and sensitive to the relationship. And but like knowing that there's a larger world than just my my particular drives, myopic focus, and moment to moment, like you dig this, you dig this, you dig this, like there's other parts to me.
Or there's just other aspects to relationships that might be equally important or even way more important to other people. Like I've basically, with the sexual drive, is just put a huge magnifying glass on one aspect of a relationship, which is the sort of arousal, attraction, interestingness part, which is important, but like there are so many other parts of what a relationship is that matter a lot more to other people. So, I discount the degrees that people might care about me in these other facets, or even be connecting to me, or, really invested in me in these other ways that I don't value, so it's like, I'm saying that you've got to care about me in this way.
Real relationships are actually social.
Right.
That explains a lot.
Yeah.
You three.
Yeah, us three right here. Why we never call Nancy. And she has to call.
Exactly. Why I always have to do the calling, David. Fine, I'm not bitter.
Not at all.
No.
Well, I need to get going before my Gurge group, but this is good. I think that if you should do more kind of things like unpacking cultural stuff or art or movies or something.
I've
Yeah,
read
this-
Avatar:
this
The
got
Last
juicy.
Airbender personally, but I know that's probably not you guys' style.
That's
so.
too social.
It's so social, and I love it.
I've been told
well,
I need
it's-
to see it because it gets into the elements. It's,
Do not watch the movie. Do not
Is it
watch
the-
the movie.
what's it
it's
called?
a show. Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Oh no.
See, you guys. I
Is it,
think David would like it. It's very nine world.
Yeah, I'm
I
sure
can see
it's
David
9,
getting into it.
Yeah.
but it's probably really sexual last, I bet,
It's very sexual last, yeah.
which is a bit of a problem.
It's a bit of a
I'm pretty prejudicial there.
Oh,
but
really? I never
Slightly.
never
Yeah.
knew.
That's
Alright,
why I
well,
want
about
to
it.
use you. But yeah.
Well, yeah, obviously.
All right, I gotta get going.
Okay,
All right,
guys.
Okay, guys.
Later.
Talk to
Bye.
you later. Bye.
Deep as the river of desire, the ashes and the fire turn in this night inside, and the light from you